Hello everyone, my friends. May the Creator bless those who watch my channel. Leave likes and write comments. I am not sharing this history to create conflict between two peoples. This is simply history. The purpose is to remember the past, so we can look at the present and the future with a better perspective. I live in the great country of the United States and I need nothing more than that. Subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and drop a comment. If you notice any mistakes, feel free to point them out. Thank you all, and please make sure to subscribe. The Wounded Knee Incident, 1973. 52 years ago. In the early hours of February 27, 1973, more than 100 Native Americans arrived by vehicle in the village of Wounded Knee, located in the Pine Ridge Reservation, South Dakota. Activists of the American Indian Movement, AIM, took 40 residents hostage and completely surrounded the village. This was the last armed conflict in U.S. history between the Native Americans and white people. It lasted only 71 days. Corruption, uranium, churches. For the Lakota Indians of the Sioux tribe, Wounded Knee is the site of a horrific massacre of their people. In 1890, the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army slaughtered 300 Native Americans here. Most of them were women and children. Meanwhile, only 25 white soldiers lost their lives in the massacre. By 1973, Wounded Knee had become a small settlement of 40 people. It was part of the Pine Ridge Reservation, home to 14,000 Native Americans. The main problems there included unemployment, crime, alcoholism, and a high infant mortality rate. There were even rumors that pharmaceutical companies were conducting experiments on Native American children. Moreover, the Lakota people controlled only half of the reservation's land, while the U.S. government occupied the other half, where they had discovered uranium deposits. The only thing the residents could fund themselves was the construction of churches. A total of 137 churches were built, meaning there was one church for every 100 residents. However, the real issue was the corrupt and self-serving tribal leader, Dick Wilson. The decisive move. On the night of February 27, 1973, a convoy of 200 vehicles entered the reservation. The vehicles carried radical activists from the American Indian Movement, AIM, who had come to remove the corrupt tribal leader, who was collaborating with the U.S. government. The AIM leaders were Russell Means and Dennis Banks. Later, Russell Means would become an actor and play the role of Chingachgook in the 1992 film The Last of the Mohicans. Failing to reach an agreement with the tribal leader, AIM activists took a decisive step. On February 28, South Dakota police received a report that unknown individuals had looted a store in Wounded Knee, dug trenches around churches, and taken 11 hostages who later voluntarily joined the activists. Before the war, at that moment, the Native Americans declared their independence from U.S. government rule. They also demanded a revision of the treaties between the U.S. government and the Native American people. In an interview with Newsweek, Russell Means stated, "The government has two choices. Either wipe us out like they did in 1890, or reconsider our demands." More than 300 people participated in the uprising, including both visitors and local residents. Women, children, and elders were also present. The insurgents armed themselves with revolvers, hunting rifles, a few other firearms, and even an AK-47. Like their ancestors, they prepared for battle by painting their faces and tying red cloth around their heads. Their final stronghold was the church standing on the mass grave of the 1890 massacre victims. By the evening of February 28, police and FBI units arrived and completely blocked off the village. Soon after, tribal leader Dick Wilson joined government forces. He mocked the insurgents, calling them communist puppets and clowns. Meanwhile, his supporters set fire to homes and brutally beat any Native Americans suspected of ties to Means, creating chaos. Relentless gunfire. Gunfire erupted between the Native Americans and federal forces. On March 3, Colonel Volney Warner, Chief of Staff of the 82nd Airborne Division, arrived at a nearby military base and decided to take decisive action. According to tribal elder Harry Rowland's memoirs, the authorities deployed armored vehicles to the village and opened heavy machine gun fire on the Native Americans. On February 26, Lakota AIM activist and Vietnam War veteran Buddy Lamont was killed during the shootout. The time for negotiations had come to an end. On May 9, 1973, the Native Americans abandoned their positions. That same day, activists from the American Indian Movement, AIM, Lakota leaders and White House representatives met to discuss the issue. However, instead of negotiating, the Native Americans received a letter from President Nixon's aide stating, "The time for making treaties with the Indians ended back in 1871. Only Congress can decide on this matter." But congressmen had no interest in holding any public hearings. Instead of negotiations, the uprising's organizers were arrested. The trial lasted 4 months. And only thanks to public outrage and the skilled legal work of attorneys Mark Lane and William Kunstler were the Native American leaders released. Their acquittal was influenced by evidence that the FBI had illegally intimidated and coerced witnesses. Between 1973 and 1976, 64 members of the American Indian Movement, AIM, were either killed or imprisoned. One of the uprising's organizers, Dennis Banks, was forced to live in hiding for 10 years. It was not until 2007 that a group of Lakota Native Americans renounced U.S. citizenship and declared the creation of an independent republic. In 1973, the Native Americans rose up for the last time after many years. They took up arms and fought against the U.S. government. Today, Native Americans defend their rights using different methods. They can sue the government, actively engage with the media and human rights organizations, and demand additional benefits from the authorities. Nevertheless, modern Native Americans have never forgotten their ancestors and continue to preserve their identity and ancient traditions to this day.